There are moments when life seems to whisper in a language only your soul can hear, an invisible thread tugging at your heart, pulling you towards something you can't quite name. Perhaps you've felt it before, that sudden awareness that there is more to your existence than the ordinary rhythm of days. A quiet summons, deep and undeniable, that separates those who simply live from those who are meant to awaken. If you are listening right now, it is no coincidence. You found this message at the exact moment you were meant to, drawn here by a current far greater than chance. But the higher you climb, the subtler the tests become. The closer you move toward your true calling, the more powerful the distractions that appear. And among them all, none is as potent or as deceptive as the final snare. It is not a loud threat. It hides in intimacy, in longing, in the most natural of desires. That snare has a name many avoid: sex. The very act that can create life also carries the power to scatter the life force you've been carefully gathering. This is not about shame or fear. It is about energy, about focus, about protecting the mission written into your spirit before you were born. Think back to your own story. Have you ever noticed how temptation often arrives right when you're on the edge of a breakthrough? A sudden passion, a magnetic encounter, an invitation that feels impossible to refuse. These moments are rarely random. For those with a sacred path, nothing is random. These are not accidents. They are tests, invitations wrapped in pleasure, asking whether you will trade what is eternal for what fades. If these words strike something deep within you, stay with them. You don't need to have every answer today. You only need to listen and remember. To understand this final challenge is more than knowledge. It is an awakening, a crossing, a victory. And that is why this message exists. To remind you that you are not alone. To show you that there is a way to guard your power and walk forward stronger than ever. Before we go deeper, I invite you to do two simple things. Subscribe to this channel right now so we can walk this journey together. And in the comments, write the number 99. To most, it's just a number. But for those who know, 99 is a sign of completion and renewal, the moment when old cycles end and true purpose begins. By writing it, you are not just typing digits. You are declaring that you hear the call. Take a slow breath, because what comes next will reach further than words. In the next chapter, we will uncover the ancient warnings, the voices of sages and seekers who knew long ago that this final test would come. And when you hear what they discovered, you may realize this story is far older and far closer than you ever imagined. Long before our modern distractions and glowing screens, sages and mystics spoke in voices that still echo through time. They knew that the highest spiritual paths are never without their hidden snares. From the desert hermits of early Christianity to the ascetics of the Himalayan peaks, from the whispered teachings of the Kabbalists to the silent halls of Zen, a single message repeats across centuries and continents: beware the power of unguarded desire. They were not speaking of casual morality or man-made rules. They were speaking of something far older, a pattern woven into the human journey itself. In the scrolls of the Desert Fathers, we read of seekers who retreated into endless silence, only to find their most formidable battles were not against hunger or cold, but against sudden waves of longing that no wilderness could silence. In the Upanishads, sages describe the life force as a river that can either flow upward toward awakening or downward into endless cycles of craving. Even the Greek philosophers, often remembered for logic more than mystery, warned that passion, left untended, scatters the soul's strength like sparks on the wind. These ancient voices understood something that science now begins to confirm. Sexual energy is not merely physical. It is a concentrated current of life force. When handled with reverence, it can create worlds. Life itself springs from it. But when chased blindly, it can drain the very vitality that carries a seeker toward illumination. To the chosen ones, those destined to pierce the veil of ordinary existence, this truth was given as a sacred caution. The closer you draw to the summit, the more seductive the valley becomes. Consider the symbolism that repeats again and again. The serpent in the garden, the sirens luring sailors from their course, the tales of gods who fall from grace for a single night of passion. These are not merely moral fables. They are maps of consciousness, warnings encoded in story. Each tale whispers the same truth. At the threshold of transformation, desire will test the heart one final time. Not because desire is evil, but because the heart must prove it can master what it once obeyed. And yet these warnings were never meant to breed fear. The sages did not condemn the body. They honored it as a temple. What they offered was not repression, but recognition, a call to see clearly what lies behind the glittering mask of temptation. They knew that when you recognize the test for what it is, the test loses its power. Today, their voices reach across thousands of years to speak to you. They are not relics of a distant past. They are a living chorus reminding every soul on the path. You will be offered a pleasure that feels inevitable, a union that seems harmless, a desire that promises relief.
Look deeper.
Remember who you are. This is the wisdom the ancients left like a lantern at the crossroads, so that when the final trap appears, the chosen will not stumble in the dark. In the next chapter, we will move from these timeless echoes into the very core of their insight, the energy exchange, the understanding that what many call desire is in truth a reservoir of creative force. To grasp this is to begin mastering the current itself. Every living being carries a hidden current, a quiet, luminous force that moves beneath thought and breath. Different cultures have given it many names: prana in Sanskrit, chi in Chinese tradition, ruach in ancient Hebrew texts, vital force in mystical Christianity. Whatever the name, it is the same phenomenon, the life stream that animates flesh and awakens consciousness. Sexual energy is not a separate spark. It is this life stream at its most concentrated, the molten core of our creative power. When you begin to recognize it for what it is, the entire conversation about desire transforms. Imagine this energy as a radiant river flowing through you. It begins in the root, where survival and instinct dwell, and it can surge upward like a column of light. When the river rises in harmony, through meditation, devotion, artistic creation, it nourishes every cell, sharpens intuition, and feeds the higher centers of awareness. But when the same current is scattered through unconscious indulgence, it leaks outward like water spilled on desert sand. The body may experience a brief release, but the spirit feels a quiet depletion. Focus dulls, clarity fades, the flame that drives purpose flickers. This is not a punishment. It is simply the mathematics of energy. What is given away without intention no longer fuels the climb. The sages of old understood this with an almost scientific precision. In the Upanishads, seekers are told that the seed is fire. Taoist masters mapped internal channels where the generative force can circulate and refine itself into spiritual vitality. Early Christian mystics spoke of chastity of heart, not as denial of the body, but as the discipline that lets one's light shine without interruption. Across oceans and centuries, the same recognition appears. Sexual energy is the primary currency of human power. Spend it blindly and the account empties. Guide it wisely, and it multiplies into strength, vision, and even miracles. This is why those on a sacred path inevitably face the final trap. As a chosen one grows in awareness, the universe, or perhaps the soul itself, presents an unmistakable question. Will you wield this energy, or will it wield you? The test is subtle. It rarely arrives as crude temptation. It might come as a deep magnetic pull towards someone who feels fated, an encounter that seems charged with destiny. The mind whispers, this must be right. How could something so intense be wrong? But the core issue is not morality. It is mastery. The question is whether you will remain the steward of your own power. Understand, this is not a call to fear or to permanent abstinence. Desire itself is sacred. The very same force that creates new life can also create art, insight, compassion, and acts of world-changing courage. Great works of music, towering inventions, movements of justice and beauty have sprung from energy that might once have been bound to passion, but was consciously redirected toward light. This redirection is what the alchemists meant by transmutation, taking a lower vibration and refining it into gold. Picture the moment when desire surges. Your heartbeat quickens, thoughts scatter, a tide of sensation rises. Instead of rushing toward release, pause, breathe, feel the current climb your spine like a shimmering thread. In that stillness, the purely physical begins to reveal its second face, an almost electric creativity, an unspoken idea, a sudden burst of vision. What began as impulse becomes inspiration. What sought escape becomes fuel. For the chosen, this practice of inner alchemy is not repression. It is freedom. It means you are no longer a captive of fleeting pleasure nor a slave to old fears. You can choose when and how to share your fire. You can channel it into a loving partnership that uplifts both souls, into art that outlives you, into service that heals a wounded world. You no longer fear the river because you have learned to steer it. When you live with this awareness, sexuality ceases to be a battlefield of guilt or indulgence. It becomes a sacred reservoir. Each decision, every glance, every embrace, every moment of restraint or surrender shapes the direction of that reservoir. And each time you choose with intention, you gather more strength for the path ahead. This is the essence of the energy exchange. To understand that your most intimate impulses are also your most potent source of creative force. To squander them unconsciously is to dim the flame of destiny. To master them is to walk with a brightness that nothing can extinguish. In the next chapter, we turn to the mirror of desire, a revelation that the longing for another is often a reflection of the soul's deepest yearning for union with the divine. To see this clearly is to understand why the final test is never merely about the body, but about the infinite love from which the body itself was born. Desire is one of the most powerful forces in the human story. At first glance, it seems simple. The spark of attraction, the rush of chemistry, the magnetic pull between two bodies. Yet when you look beneath the surface, you begin to see that desire is far more than a physical impulse. It is a messenger. It is the language through which the soul speaks of its deepest longing, to reunite with the infinite source from which it came. Every time you feel that magnetic pull toward another person, something sacred is trying to reveal itself. Think of the moments when attraction feels almost supernatural. The air thickens, time bends, and the presence of the other person fills every corner of your awareness. This intensity is not random. It is the echo of the greater union your spirit remembers. Before there were bodies, before there were names, there was a wholeness, a belonging that cannot be lost. Desire reminds you of that forgotten origin. What you crave is not merely the warmth of another body. It is the touch of eternity, mirrored in human form. Mystics across cultures have tried to describe this hidden truth. The Sufi poet Rumi spoke of the beloved who wears 1,000 masks, each lover only a temporary face of the divine. Christian contemplatives wrote of an eros of the soul, an ache for God that can feel like earthly romance. Hindu sages called it the Leela, the divine play in which the one hides inside the many so that love can rediscover itself. Even modern psychology offers its own lens, suggesting that we project our unclaimed qualities, our courage, our brilliance, our tenderness onto those we desire, so that we can finally see what has always been within us. For the chosen ones, this understanding is more than poetry. It is protection. The final trap is not merely the act of sex. It is the subtle confusion between the reflection and the source of light. When you believe that another person is your completion, you give away the power that belongs only to your own awakening. You start to chase their presence as if it were salvation, forgetting that what you truly long for is already alive in your own depths. Notice how this pattern unfolds. You meet someone who feels uncannily familiar, as if you have known them for lifetimes. Conversation flows like a melody you can't stop humming. Your mind whispers, "This is destiny. This is the missing piece of my life." And yet the qualities you adore, confidence, creativity, mystery, are not foreign gifts. They are your own divine attributes reflected back to awaken recognition. The other becomes a living mirror, revealing what you are ready to claim inside yourself. This is why so many sacred traditions speak of the true union as an inner marriage. The alchemists called it the conjunctio, the mystical joining of the masculine and feminine within the self. Kabbalists speak of the wedding of the soul with the infinite, Even in modern depth psychology, the journey toward wholeness is often described as the integration of inner opposites, the embrace of both the receptive and the active, the intuitive and the rational within one being. Only when these inner counterparts are united can love between two people be free of grasping or need. When you understand desire as a mirror, the way you move through relationships changes. You stop hunting for someone to fill an emptiness and start exploring the vastness already present in you. You begin to see every surge of attraction as an invitation to remember your own light, not a command to possess another. You can meet beauty without trying to own it, share intimacy without losing yourself, and experience passion without mistaking it for destiny. This recognition brings a profound liberation. Love no longer feels like a game of winning or losing. It becomes a temple where two whole beings meet, not to complete each other, but to celebrate the completeness they already embody. You can give freely because you are not giving from lack. You can receive deeply because you are not trying to steal what cannot be taken. For the chosen, this insight is the key to passing the test. The world will offer you reflections, faces that shine with the qualities you are awakening. Some will be breathtaking, some will feel fated. But when you know that the divine spark you admire is also your own, you can bow to the beauty without becoming its prisoner. You can love fiercely and release gently, because you understand that the true beloved was never outside of you. And it is from this place of inner wholeness that the next challenge emerges. Once you see desire clearly, the universe, or your own highest self, will present a proving ground, a moment when longing rises like a storm and only discipline can hold the center. In the next chapter, we step into that crucible, the final test of discipline, where the power of all you have learned will be called to action. Every great journey toward awakening narrows as it approaches the summit. In the beginning, the road feels wide and scattered with possibilities, yet the higher you climb, the more the path draws in, until it feels like a single steep passage carved into the mountain. It is here, at the edge of fulfillment, that the most subtle and powerful challenge appears. For those who carry a sacred calling, this moment is inevitable. It is the universe's way of asking the question that defines destiny. Are you ready to rule your own kingdom of energy, or will you remain a subject to fleeting desire? This is the final test of discipline. It rarely announces itself with thunder. Instead, it often arrives wrapped in everyday life, disguised as an encounter that feels harmless or even divinely ordained. You may be deep in spiritual practice, steady in your sense of purpose, when a sudden connection disrupts the calm. A stranger's glance lingers a second too long. A conversation sparks with an intimacy that seems to bypass time. The attraction feels magnetic, undeniable, almost fated, and inside you, a quiet tension begins. The pull of the body and the call of the soul meeting in a single breath. The ancients knew this test well. Yogic texts speak of brahmacharya, which is often misread as simple celibacy. In truth, it is far more profound. The conscious direction of vital force, the art of remaining sovereign over one's own life energy. Taoist alchemists mapped the inner rivers where sexual essence could be circulated and refined into spiritual light, warning that careless release would scatter a lifetime's cultivation. Early Christian mystics described the bridle of the E-up spirit, a discipline that allowed the seeker to stand in the presence of overwhelming beauty and remain centered in God. In every tradition, the language changes, but the lesson is identical. Freedom is not found in the absence of desire, but in the mastery of it. Why must the chosen face this test? Because sexual energy is the very current that powers creation. It is the same force that builds worlds, writes symphonies, and births new life. When guided with consciousness, it fuels insight, courage, and spiritual vision. When spent without intention, it drains vitality, scatters focus, and blurs the inner sight needed for higher work. The final challenge is not about denying pleasure for its own sake. It is about proving that you can remain the steward of this sacred fire when every nerve urges you to give it away. Picture the moment itself. You feel the undeniable chemistry, the eye-to-eyes heartbeat quickening, the air between you thick with possibility. Your mind whispers a dozen excuses. This is destiny. This is harmless. This is love. The body leans forward, but the soul listens deeper. Beneath the desire is a quiet knowing. This is the gate. This is the question. In that silence, you decide whether you will be carried by the current or whether you will guide it upward, turning heat into light. To pass through this gate is not to become cold or lifeless. True discipline is not repression. It is presence. It is the strength to feel the full force of passion and remain awake within it. It is the ability to choose a conscious yes or a deliberate no without fear or shame. This is what the sages called transmutation, the art of lifting the raw surge of instinct until it becomes creativity, service, and luminous clarity. You do not kill desire, you refine it. Those who master this discipline discover an unexpected freedom. Temptation loses its power, not because the world becomes dull, but because the center within you becomes radiant. You can stand in the glow of beauty, you can share deep intimacy, and still remain whole, never trading eternal purpose for a momentary thrill. Your presence begins to change. People sense a steadiness in you, a quiet gravity that needs no explanation. It is the fragrance of someone who has faced the storm and learned to command the wind. This victory is not a single moment, but a lifelong art. You may meet the test again and again in new forms, a sudden surge of attraction, an unexpected opportunity, a night when loneliness feels heavy and the easy path calls. Each time you stand firm, you strengthen the invisible architecture of your spirit. Each time you remember who you are, the energy once spent in impulse rises into vision, creativity, and healing power. For the chosen, this discipline is the bridge between potential and destiny. It does not diminish love, it purifies it. It allows you to enter relationships as a whole being, offering affection without grasping, passion without addiction, intimacy without the fear of losing yourself. It is the quiet triumph of sovereignty. And yet this is not the end of the story. Mastery of desire is only one side of the great work. The other side is transformation, the ability to take the same energy that once threatened to scatter you and turn it into a force for creation, service, and light. In the next chapter, we will explore this sacred art of transformation, not repression, where sexual energy becomes the very fuel for your highest purpose, and the world around you begins to feel the radiance of your inner fire. True mastery is never about locking a door and throwing away the key. It is about learning how to walk through the door with full awareness, to carry the flame without letting it burn you or burn itself out. After the crucible of discipline, the chosen ones discover that the point was never to kill desire, but to know it, to refine it, and to let it rise into something infinitely more powerful than physical release. This is the art of transformation. For centuries, seekers have spoken of a secret alchemy hidden in the human body. The yogis called it Kundalini, a coiled current that, when guided upward, awakens every center of consciousness. Taoist adepts practiced the microcosmic orbit, circulating sexual essence through internal channels until it became pure light. Christian mystics described the heart as a furnace where passion becomes charity and creative fire. Across cultures, the message is the same. Sexual energy is not a sin to be buried, but a treasure to be transmuted. Think of this energy as raw sunlight. Left unfocused, it warms for a moment and disperses. Focused through a lens, it becomes a beam capable of igniting stars in miniature. When you guide your own vital force with intention, through meditation, prayer, art, deep service, You take the same current that once demanded release and turn it into illumination. The desire that could have scattered your strength instead fuels clarity, creativity, and even healing. Transformation begins with attention. The next time desire stirs, instead of rushing toward escape, pause. Breathe. Feel the current rise like a luminous river through the spine. With every inhale, sense it feeding the heart, the mind, the quiet spaces of intuition. Notice how the urge to release slowly shifts into a pulse of inspiration, an idea for a project, a sudden compassion for someone in need, a fresh surge of physical vitality. This is the first taste of transmutation, and it is available to anyone willing to stay present. This path does not demand a life of isolation. It calls for consciousness in everything you choose. In a loving relationship, it might mean slowing down, treating intimacy as a ritual where energy is exchanged with reverence rather than consumed in haste. It might mean periods of celibacy not as denial, but as a conscious gathering of power for creation or service. It might mean channeling the same passion once spent in pursuit of pleasure into music, invention, teaching, or the quiet acts of kindness that reshape the world. What matters is intention. Repression tries to kill desire, and in doing so it breeds shadow, secret cravings, hidden shame, sudden outbursts. Transformation welcomes desire as sacred fuel and gives it direction. Where repression makes the heart small, transformation makes it vast. Where repression hardens the body, transformation fills it with living light. The fruits of this practice are unmistakable. People feel it before you speak, a steady radiance, a calm intensity, a vitality that seems to charge the air around you. Your creativity deepens, your intuition sharpens. Challenges that once drained you now awaken your courage. You become a living testament to the truth that nothing in you needs to be destroyed, only lifted. For the chosen ones, this is the true victory over the final trap. Sex is no longer a battlefield of guilt or a chain of compulsions. It becomes a reservoir of divine energy that you can direct toward the highest good. You remain free to love, to create, to serve, without fear that passion will steal your strength. Instead, passion becomes your strength, flowing upward into every breath and every work of your hands. From here, the journey turns outward again. Having mastered the inner fire, you are ready to walk the higher path, one where every relationship, every action, every quiet moment is infused with sacred intention. In the next chapter, we explore this final stage, walking the higher path, where a life once divided between spirit and flesh becomes a seamless offering of light. When the storms of temptation have passed and the fires of desire have been refined into light, the path before you opens into a wide, luminous horizon. This is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new way of being, a way in which every breath, every choice, every relationship becomes a deliberate act of sacred presence. The higher path is not about escape from the world. It is about walking through it as one who has discovered the world's deepest truth, that spirit and matter are not separate, that the divine and the human are threads of the same tapestry. On this path, you move differently. Your steps are measured not by speed, but by depth. You no longer chase pleasure as if it could fill an inner void, nor do you shrink from it as if it were dangerous. Pleasure and pain, gain and loss all become part of a single dance. You stand at the center, rooted and radiant. What once would have shaken you, an unexpected attraction, a sudden disappointment, a flash of anger, now arrives like a breeze against a mountain. You feel it, you acknowledge it, and you let it pass without being carried away. Relationships transform in this new light. Love ceases to be a bargaining table where needs are traded and fears negotiated. It becomes a meeting of equals, a communion of two whole beings who have nothing to take from one another and everything to share. You can look into another's eyes and see not a savior or a possession, but a living mirror of the same infinite spark that burns within you. Intimacy, when chosen, becomes a sacrament, a conscious celebration of divine energy, because you no longer enter it seeking completion. You are already complete. Even the smallest moments become sacred rituals. Morning light spilling across the floor, the scent of rain on warm earth, the quiet rise and fall of your own breath. Each detail becomes a portal to the infinite. Eating a meal, you taste the universe nourishing itself. Speaking to a stranger, you feel the silent exchange of spirit behind every word. The tasks of daily life, work, rest, creation, service, are no longer divided into spiritual and ordinary. Everything is an expression of the same living current that once surged as desire and now flows as wisdom. This higher path naturally draws you towards service, not as duty but as overflow. The energy you once guarded so carefully now moves outward, blessing the world without effort. Some feel called to create art that awakens, to write or paint or sing with a power that stirs sleeping hearts. Others become healers, teachers, quiet guides who embody peace in the midst of chaos. Many simply carry a presence that changes the atmosphere wherever they go. A calm gravity, a quiet warmth that invites others to remember who they truly are. Whether public or private, dramatic or subtle, your life becomes a living offering. Challenges do not vanish. Temptation still appears, but it no longer rules you. You may feel the old surge of attraction, the sudden tug of the world's noise, yet it meets a steadiness that cannot be shaken. Discipline, once a conscious effort, becomes second nature. You know how to let the energy rise through the spine, how to breathe into the heart, how to stay awake when the old patterns call. In this steadiness, you discover a new freedom, the freedom to say yes or no from love, not fear, to act from clarity, not compulsion. The world, sensing this transformation, responds. People may not understand why they feel drawn to your presence, but they will feel it. There is a subtle radiance about you, a quiet authority that requires no display. You do not need to preach. Your life itself becomes the message. Without a word, you remind others of the light they carry. Without effort, you become a catalyst for awakening in those you meet. This is what it means to walk the higher path, to be fully human and fully divine, to embody passion without being possessed by it, to live in the world without being of it. You do not renounce beauty. You reveal its true source. You do not reject love. You enlarge its meaning until it includes every breath of creation. You become a bridge between heaven and earth, a living proof that the final trap can be transformed into the final triumph. And yet even here, the story is not of perfection, but of presence. You will still learn, still grow, still meet moments of vulnerability, but you will meet them with the calm certainty that nothing can take from you the wholeness you have found. The same force that once tested you now flows through you as blessing. The fire that once threatened to consume you now lights your way and warms the world. From this place of quiet mastery, we step into the closing movement of the journey, freedom beyond the trap, where all the lessons converge, and the chosen ones discover that the union they sought has always been within, waiting patiently for the day they would recognize themselves as both seeker and sought, both lover and beloved, both the flame and the light it casts. The path we have traveled together began with a whisper, a quiet recognition that there is more to life than the restless chase of pleasure or the numb routine of survival. It moved through ancient warnings, through the recognition of desire as sacred energy, through the discipline that transforms passion into power, and finally into the serenity of the higher path. Now we arrive at the final truth. The freedom you seek has never been outside you. It has always been the essence of who you are. Sex was never the enemy. Desire was never a curse. These were teachers, patient and unrelenting, guiding you to the center of your own being. The so-called final trap was not a punishment laid by some distant force. It was a mirror held before your soul. It asked only one question. Will you choose awareness over impulse, sovereignty over surrender, eternity over the fleeting? By walking this journey, by listening, by watching yourself with honesty, you have already begun to answer. Freedom beyond the trap is not the cold absence of longing. It is the radiant presence of wholeness. You no longer need to run from temptation or cling to discipline like a weapon. You stand rooted in the quiet knowledge that your power cannot be stolen because it is not borrowed. It is the life force itself, the same current that moves the stars and stirs the tides, now flowing through you as conscious choice. You can love without losing yourself, create without exhaustion, serve without depletion. What once threatened to drain you now becomes the source of your greatest vitality. Look back at the journey, from the ancient voices who warned of scattered energy, to the discovery that sexual force is the very spark of creation, to the realization that desire is a mirror of the divine. You have learned to hold that energy, to guide it upward, to let it illuminate every corner of your life. You have learned that mastery is not repression, but transformation, not isolation, but participation in the world, with eyes open and heart steady. This is the quiet victory of the chosen ones. The trap dissolves when you recognize that there is nothing left to trap. You're not a prisoner of the body or the mind. You are the witness, the flame, the eternal presence behind every thought and breath. Whether you choose partnership or solitude, creation or contemplation, each step is now an act of freedom. If these words have stirred something in you, if you feel the resonance of this truth, let that feeling guide your next steps. Subscribe to this channel now so you never walk this path alone, and so that each new message finds you right when you need it. And in the comments, write the number 99 one more time. In the language of spirit, 99 is the symbol of completion and renewal, a sign that you are closing old cycles and stepping fully into your true power. By typing it, you are declaring to yourself and to the universe, I choose freedom beyond the trap. Carry this understanding into every moment. Let it color the way you speak, the way you work, the way you love. Let every sunrise remind you that the same light that breaks the horizon lives in you. And when temptation appears, and it will, greet it not with fear, but with a smile of recognition. It has no claim on you. It is only another invitation to remember the truth you now embody. You have crossed the threshold. You are the fire and the light it casts. The ultimate union you sought has been within you from the beginning, and now, at last, you know.